This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Rated T to M. Hey, want to hear a PC Game Pass ad? I'll take your silence as a yes. Want new games on day one like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Stalker 2? I thought so. How about unlocking all the League of Legends champions when you link your Riot Games account? All for one low monthly price? Well, guess what? We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Stalker 2 available November 20th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. And that's the end of the script.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central podcast. On this week's episode, we draw out all the positives from the defeat to Lyon, preview the game against the Cheetahs, and also try and select our 23 and why we think Talupi Falato might be back, baby. Hope you enjoy.
You're listening to the Cardiff Central podcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cardiff Central podcast. This is Harley as ever, and joining me is Dan. How are we doing today?
Yeah, all good, Tal, all good.
Excellent. So this is a bit of a sad news. We've had a winning streak broken. We finally have been defeated by the mighty Wolves of Lyon. So tries from Josh Adams, Danny Southworth, Ellis Bevan, and Gabe Hamer-Webb were not enough to beat Lyon. So we went down 37-26. Thank you. First of all, disclaimer, I didn't watch this game until Monday because I was not paying €8 for the privilege. Thankfully, Dan sorted me out. So Dan, you watched it live. What are your main summary points before we start delving into some of the nitty-gritty?
I think the main thing was that it was clear from like the very first kickable penalty that we won, that we turned up to score 4 tries there. When we turned 3 points down from dead in front and score 4 tries, we did. So that's a positive. I think other positive is youngsters look good and got good, like, valuable minutes. Some of the fringe players as well, good to see them getting a run out. So there was a fair bit to like individually, and then sort of downside is that we did like consistently shoot ourselves in the foot. Whenever we sort of half got ourselves back into that game, we got ourselves straight back out of it again. Never really looked like winning it or claiming that second losing bonus point towards that last quarter of the game. But sort of, I guess the summary is that it may well be a valuable try bonus point that we picked up, but there's work to be done to get the campaign properly up and running this weekend, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was looking through some stat. I mean, the best example of shooting ourselves in the foot has to be after Gabe Hamer-Webb scores the bonus point try, and we basically completely butcher the kickoff, and Lyon are under the posts.
Yeah.
And then from there was basically they just kept us at this one. Going through the stats, there are some really positive things. So our 22 conversion was great, 4.3 points per entry. Lyon only got 3 points per entry, but we let them in twice as much as we got into theirs, due quite largely to some very poor discipline at moments and very stupid penalties to get through. One that stuck in my head was Alex Mann having a bit of rush of blood to the head and running, after Gabe Webb gets pushed into touch, he runs in from halfway up the pitch, which is like, it's not really necessary, but I'm glad you're sticking up for your teammate. And set piece is a bit creaky, as just I don't see that as an issue, as an issue, because that just seems to be the Cardiff way.
I think up front was, ultimately, if you lose that physical battle, then it's an uphill struggle then to get anything out of it, and that was probably, if you're looking at it from a tactical point of view, that was what hamstrung Cardiff. Whether it was on the borderline of legal and illegal, the way that Lyon were turning some of their mauls up the field, but they had the dominance there. They had the scrum dominance. Our own line out throw was not, it wasn't like dreadful, but it wasn't fully accurate either. And then just in sort of phase play, we pretty much lost the gain line battle there in the middle of the
But
pitch.
you say that, but actually we better per carry. We were better post contact meters than. Then I think the problem was we just didn't really get the ball. It was a very typical kind of thing. We just couldn't get hold of the ball at times.
Yeah, and the thing with I think with Lyon, it was that it wasn't that they were making sort of 5-6 meters per go or anything. It was just, but every carry was a meter over. There wasn't much until Josh McNally come on. There wasn't many dominant tackles from us. So that Lyon, with that set piece dominance, and which obviously there's already being the home team, there's a little bit of advantage for them there. And then with the set piece dominance, and then looking like they're sort of making a bit of ground each time, they have that momentum. It's difficult to arrest that then if you're Cardiff's defence. You end up on the wrong side of the penalty count quite easily. And that was sort of the story of the game. But I mean, like you said, attack wise, I thought we were actually really clinical. We looked really good when we did sort of go through phases, or when we did get the opportunity to kick down into Lyon's territory. We some of our tries were really nicely taken. That Josh Adams try is a really good try. The sort of the break from Harry Millard, and the way we capitalise on that, then back across the game, Hamer Webb for that fourth try as well. That's something that we haven't always seen from Cardiff. Is we make the initial break, but we don't always sort of capitalise on that straight away. But it is tricky when in between you can't quite get a hold of the game and arrest any of that Lyon momentum. And the other thing I'd say as well is I didn't think our kicking strategy was quite right in that
that's so wrong.
We kicked to compete a fair amount. The sort of quality of the kicks was fine, but I think it should have been apparent to somebody on the field or somebody in the stands that repeatedly kicking it to Niniashvili, who is like, there's a reason this guy is one of the hottest rated prospects in world rugby at the moment, and he just killed us quite. Like, he was taking balls out of the sky fine. His kicking was really good. His counter-attacking hurt us quite a bit as well. The option really should have been to kick as long down the field as we can, pin Lyon back, and some of that, either win field position for that, because they were kicking to touch pretty much every time, which allowed us to set something up from midfield. Or if they are going to run it back, then they've just got so much further to go. I think we slightly got hold of that towards the end of the game a little bit more, but damage had been done a little bit by then. I think really by the end of the first half, it was obvious that just kicking it to Niniashvili repeatedly wasn't really in our interest.
Yeah, yes, I did. That was one thing to think. One thing I thought was it was great to see Josh Adams get on the score sheet, and I thought when he switched to fullback again, his position just excellently did some excellent counter-attacking runs. Why I said if you are going to make a utility out of Josh Adams, wing 15.
Yes,
plenty. Trust me, 50. He's a far better winger. Although, as we saw, I remember seeing saying that in games where he's scored more tries from 13 than 14 for Wales. He has a higher strike rate, which is just a very, which is just I think a funnier thing. Because obviously he's predominantly left winger. I think that's what he's best. Yeah, I thought the kicking game wasn't quite right. It was getting to see T. Nistabir go off early as well. Not in time. I didn't quite get what happened because I'll be honest, I watched it at double speed, which I'll be honest is the way to watch rugby matches back. Because you just you can get through scrums, so you can get through resets so quick and argy-bargy so quickly. But,
no, I didn't.
It looked like a head shit. It looked like a head injury, but because I don't think he was particularly holding or was assisted with anything. He just sort of. I just remember it was a restart and Sheedy was taking it. I was like,
yeah, it was the try that Lyon scored in the left corner at the bottom. But I watched it on the stream. I don't know. I know a lot of people had different issues with their streams and could hear different things. On the one that I listened to, and it's probably the same for you then logging into that, was that there wasn't really a ref mic, so you couldn't hear what Holly was saying. And usually if it's HIA, she would say, "Oh, he's going off for HIA or something," but there was no sound to that. He stood for a long time just in our own dead ball area with the doctor. So I stood still, which made me think more HIA, that they were sort of letting him sort of recover a second first before walking down the tunnel. But hopefully there was nothing. I watched the 2 or 3 phases before it back and couldn't see anything obvious that injured him. But
it was quite innocuous. I don't really have, I said, other than what we've just discussed, I don't really have a huge amount to say about the game. I
think it's worth name checking Steph Emanuel just because I mean he's 12 years old, but no, actually 18, making his first team debut. Probably not something that he would have had a huge amount of warning about. I know that Jockey's obviously been a fan of him and they want to get him involved at some point. I do fancy that if Jennings had been available, he probably would have started at 12. So it maybe wasn't the plan to start Emmanuel this weekend, but obviously give him the nod in the week when it was obvious Jennings was going to be in the protocol. So maybe not having too many weeks to think about it and just a couple of days of training was better for him. But great hands for Josh Adams' try. Just generally, I thought his hands in midfield were really beneficial to us. I thought his carrying was, a little bit nervous, but as you would expect, really, for an 18-year-old stepping into senior rugby. But I liked that he was trying stuff as well. He stepped out a couple of times to make interceptions. There was one that was a knock-on, one that didn't quite happen, but then he does win the interception right up under Lyon's own goalpost then at the top of the pitch. And I also like, he does throw one interception then himself towards the middle of the second half, but didn't seem to knock his confidence at all, which is great. And I think it's obviously a testament to his character and also to the coaches and the players around him that there wasn't any putting handcuffs on him and just sort of, do basics. It was, go out and express yourself. So great for him. Really good setup for him to come into, I think, as well, with Lilo there obviously next to him at 38, who was also fantastic. And I think that's probably why Tina Stabia started as well, is that if you look at a lot of the training videos this season, that obviously the first team has been running with Sheedy and Ben and Ray when they've been doing shape work and training, and then the second team has been Tina, Steph, and somebody like Rory Jennings or somebody else stepping in at 13. So I think they probably had that little bit of link between them, which is where that Josh Adams try comes from. So that was smart from Jockey as well. But I thought there was a couple of guys, just to say, I thought Ellis Bevan had one of his best games for Cardiff. I think we've been fans of him for a while, but we felt that we wanted somebody just to say, take the shackles off a bit, really start challenging the fringes and show what you're capable of around there. And he did that really well on Saturday, and hopefully he kicks on from that when he plays next. And then thought Alan Lawrence was back looking really good as well. Really big carrying performance. Him and Teddy were great in that pack. Teddy captaining for the first time as well. So it was great to see another young local lad stepping up.
Yeah, so Alan Lawrence topping the carries with 15 and Teddy topping the tackles with, again, 15, 16. So good. And then joined very closely by Dan Thomas, and surprisingly, who just
everywhere.
Tackle. Seriously, he is a more blonde, longer-haired version of me, but better at rugby in every possible way. I love tackling. I go for Steph Emanuel because obviously I've seen a lot of comments, both positively and sort of snidely, then towards Steph Emanuel. I said on the wrap, that was that performance was what he was. He's a very promising 18-year-old. It's not, don't go saying, oh, he's going to get him in the Wales squad, whatever, or he should be starting every week. Like,
way off that, yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to see that it wasn't too much of a step up for him, but I think similar to what's happened with Mackenzie Martin before he got injured, actually tuning out performance after performance for the Rags is probably the best thing for their development at the moment. And then breaking through on odd games. So I was quite pumped with that.
He'll go back to the 20s now as well. I think he might even be in the running for captaincy of that Wales under-20s team this year. And I think he'll be a really key player in that midfield.
I said he'd have potentially 3 series in 3 years with the under-20s now.
At
least 2.
But he's already had one. So this is his second campaign.
So by the time he gets to close to 20, he's going to be a seasoned campaigner there. So
yeah.
Very excellent. So let's put that game. I think put that game to bed. Moving on, so we got 1 point from that, which 1 point away in the Challenge Cups, decent. Obviously, it's a bit more important now that we get 5 points from from Cheetahs, particularly if we want to be looking at getting a few home games in the knockouts. I mean, the stupid format, you could win one game and still get through to the round 16, but trying to get cap. Even if we, it's only cap for round of 16, then we go away for 2 weeks before coming back for the final. So our opponents are the Cheetahs, who drew 20-all to Perpignan in Amsterdam, which is their dedicated home venue. Again, didn't see the game. This is the problem with the Challenge Cup, and a lot of games being on paid TV, paying for an extra stream. An opponent we've seen before, but probably nowhere near the sort of strength we're used to from their days in the Pro 14.
Yeah, so I watched just before we started. Now I thought, I'll go and watch the highlights of the Cheetahs Perpignan game, just see if there's anything. And quite brilliantly, the EPCR put out these instant highlights on YouTube, and it starts. There was only 20-all, and the highlights start with the score already 5-all. So they just sort of ditched the first try from each team in the highlights. It's a 5-minute long highlight package, and there was only a few things happen in the game, but they managed to miss 2 of the tries. So yeah, I don't ask me why they've done that or what that's about, but. Yeah, it's obviously Cheetahs were the ones to drop out when the 4 Super Rugby South Africans came in, but since then they've stayed pretty strong, competitive, sort of mirroring a bit what Western Force have ended up doing in Australia, where they ended up losing out for a bit and subsequently came back in. I think the Cheetahs will be hanging around waiting for an invite if anybody does drop out of the URC at some point. But they won the Currie Cup over the last summer. I think it finishes in September time.
Yeah.
They were part of a series where Ireland A, I think they call them like emerging.
No,
Ireland
it's emerging. It's Ireland's thing, like a bit like with Leinster, they've got their academy and then they've got their sub academy. It's Ireland A, emerging Ireland, and Scotland have joined in with that now because Daisy New Four went. I like that idea. I'm stealing it. I'm taking it. And then I'm going to stick capped Scotland internationals in the emerging because that's the definition of emerging, if you ask me.
Whatever emerging Ireland means. They went to South Africa back in October, and the Cheetahs pushed them relatively close. I think it was 1 score, maybe just about 2 score game in that one. And then there's a decent enough draw, I think. So it was a very last kick of the game. Perpignan made it 20-all, and I think obviously the Cheetahs will be disappointed with that. And it should also be mentioned that it was a very changed Perpignan team, even more so than the Lyon team that we faced. I think it was only 4 of the 23 that had played in their Top 14 game the week before that survived for Perpignan, and it was 14 changes to the starting 15 within that. So, they obviously weren't too fussed, but looking at the tries they did score, it's sort of pretty generic South African stuff, really. They were strong at the scrum and got a bit of joy from that. They scored a maul try, which you would expect. We discussed it beforehand that two of the Cheetahs pack, Giandra Rudolph and Victor Sekatete, I think his name is. We've seen them with the Ospreys because they've got a bit of a link up between the Ospreys and the Cheetahs. So those 2 lads came over on loan last season. They're going to be pretty big up front. They got a couple of big South Africans, a couple of big Namibians, a few Namibian internationals in there as well. But then they're quite young and quite raw in the backs. Then they got cut through by Perpignan for 1 try in particular off a scrum starter play, which I think Jockey and Johnny Goodridge will be eyeing up. A couple of gaps opened up through their midfield for a couple of the Perpignan players to slice through. So I think that's somewhere we can look to target them. But it is a game we do need to at least win. I think 5 points is the aim, but we definitely need to win it. Looking at last season, I think 11 points was enough for a home round of 16 game as one of the best 3rd place teams. That may be slightly higher this year, I think, looking at some of the results in round 1, but obviously it depends on how quickly teams lose interest through rounds 2 to 4 then. But yeah, I think just not just for the Challenge Cup though as well, for putting in a good performance after, it wasn't our greatest showing against Dragons, and then there was obviously a lot that could have been fixed against Lyon there with a changed team. So I think just in terms of putting down a bit of a marker of performance and taking some momentum into those 2 Christmas derbies, that a really good performance and a good bonus point win would be absolutely fantastic for Cardiff and set us up nicely for the rest of the block.
Yeah, absolutely. I said, yeah, I think Cheetahs are a thing. I mean, one, I'll just be grateful to seeing that kit again because I do think the Cheetahs have some of the best looking kits. They're one of the few teams I've seen who can pull off orange. I
Yeah,
think, but
obviously I would never support the Cheetahs because there would just be a massive clash with facial hair and hair. So I can't ever join the Cheetahs. If Cheetahs were listening, I don't want to sign. Please stop sending me contracts.
it's just because they think you're Rory Jennings. So I think we weren't too. I mean, we were somehow miles away and not too far off for our team prediction. Like, I don't think either of us were thinking Stefan Manuel last week.
No,
Any?
no,
Do
I
you think
didn't.
this could be any? Do you think we want? Are you ready to try again and see if we can get a bit more realistic one?
We need.
Just a bit of talk. So Harry Millard was seen in a knee brace, so he's unlikely to play. Um, but one person who you've noticed on your Instagram spying was Tom Bowen. Do you think Do you think he's just training with the team, or do you think he's got a realistic chance of getting some
he
minutes?
he's been training most of the season with the team. You can see him in the back, but it does seem that in the video that the club have put out of training this week that he is slightly more prominent in what he's doing. Obviously, we pretty much at the point where we've only got two fit wingers now in Josh Adams and Gabe Hamer-Webb. With Stevens is done for the season. Millard, if it's the particularly if it's a recurrence of the knee injuries that he's had, that could be a little while out. And there was a promising clip from training last week of Theo Cabango back out and running, but I suspect it'll be still a little while before we see him back in the starting lineup. So, yeah, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if Jockey's sort of seen how Steph's gone last week and thought, yeah, I'll repeat that with Tom Bowen this week. Certainly he'll be in. He went to Lyon, Tom, last week. He was a travelling reserve, so he's obviously not far off the squad in Jockey's mind. But yeah, I think if we're going to chuck a curveball in there, then I could certainly see a Tom Bowen on the wing. There's that.
So, so if we start with our back three, so I said Adams and Gabe Hamer probably are wingers because they're the fit ones. Maybe Bowen on the bench. Would you start Bowen so that you've got one big winger, one probably more
Yeah,
speedy winger?
I think if Jockey's going to do it, he's going to start him. I don't see him introducing lads off the bench for their debut necessarily. I think it's a bit easier to control their minutes that way as well. And I think it's just more difficult if you're making a debut to come on and try and get up to speed of a game rather than try and hit the ground running, and particularly in the case of Tom Bowen running very, very quickly from the start. So yeah, I think if he's going to do it, I would imagine it would be Adams and Bowen, because I think he'll stick with Adams just to keep his minutes ticking over. He's looking better and better every time he plays. So yeah, I'd go Adams and Bowen, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Now for 15, we've got two. There's sort of two trains of thought. I think one is we've rested Winnett, so we've given him a week's rest, so bringing him back in, ready for a derby. The other is Jacob Beetham hasn't had much game time due to injuries, and he was decent. I think he had a decent enough game. I think do you give him another run out just to get more minutes in the legs, with the option of using him as an option for 12 again if we need to.
Yeah, I maybe have a slight difference in terms of what I would like to see versus what I think Jockey might do. In that I would like to see Beetham start again. I agree that he looked pretty good. There was one or two rusty elements of his game against Lyon, but that's to be expected after a little while out. So, but I really enjoyed the physicality that he brought when he's hitting that line in midfield. Obviously, he's a really good distributor to step in at first receiver as well. And against a Cheetah side, which will be quite physical again, and it will bring that size element, I think. And then the flip side to that is that although Winnett had last week to rest, he's played a lot of rugby this season already. Played pretty much. He may have played every minute of our first block of games there. I don't recall him not playing across those first 6 weeks. And then he's played 280s for Wales in the test matches, come straight back in and played against the Dragons. Even with that 1 week rest, it's still quite tiring mentally as much as physically. Being in that Wales camp, I imagine, is particularly mentally draining at the moment where they're not really winning. So yeah, I wouldn't be against either benching Win It or resting him entirely again and just letting him properly recharge the batteries. Because I don't think he's the type of player who will let his form dip at all by not playing. But the flip side to that is then I think if you're a jockey and you think, right, I need a win here to get this campaign going and to get a bit of momentum, then I'm just going to pick my guy who's in form and has been playing a lot, and that is Win It at the moment. So yeah, that's the sort of the two sides to my thinking there. I don't know which way you're leaning.
I for me, I feel like we can afford to save Win It. Like, I don't think if win or lose are the Cheetahs, I'm not sure where having Win It over Beetham would necessarily, because maybe if we're going for a much more aerial game, then I'd be leaning towards Win It because I do think he's just one of our best players in the air. But then I think with Beetham's kicking, I think if we're deciding that we're going to kick long for territory, then Beetham probably is the better shout for that, and then just giving him a run out some more minutes, just trying to just remind him that we love him. We don't want him going over to the Dragons or any of the other sides or up to Edinburgh or whatever. So I think should we pen down Beetham for our fullback?
Sounds good.
So I think we're fine. Centres, sorry, Razor, you're starting again.
You're just in all the time now.
Yeah, just I know we was joking about 4 more years, but you're getting all 4 in one season.
Yeah, he was so good.
12. Ben Thomas has had his week again, had a rest.
Yeah,
we could, I think, bring him back in this must-win game. Maybe give Stefan Manuel the away game. Was it the Perpignan game?
Yeah,
give him another run out.
I wouldn't like if he wanted to ask if Jockey wanted Emmanuel to back it up. I could sort of see that. But I think there's a Wales under-20s camp this week as well. They're playing Scotland in a warm-up game at Merthyr on Friday. So I wonder if with Ben back and Jennings will be out of concussion protocol in time for the game. I don't think he'll have trained enough to probably be involved in this 23, but yeah, with both of them back, I can see Steph sort of having a bit of a feet up now. Either that, or if he hasn't gone straight back into being involved with the 20s, then the Rags have got a big old game away at Ebbw Vale, which he could slot into as well, which would be helpful.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to struggle for game time at the moment.
Yeah,
so, yeah, I think we go Benty and Lilo.
Yep.
Halfbacks, I think, pick themselves. Basically, I think it's Aled and Sheedy, isn't it? I mean, with the beer out. I mean, you might.
Yeah. So,
and also you've done some Instagram research to see that one Ellis Bevan is currently living the high life in Dubai. So
I think it was a Qatar he was in, which I don't know how much of a holiday destination that is, other than it had the World Cup there a little while ago. But yeah, this week's edition of I've seen you on holiday on Instagram is Ellis Bevan.
Right, moving on to the real important people in the pack. So starting with our front row, Domachowski was fit. He travelled. I'm guessing he was just rested. Does he come straight back in, particularly against?
Yeah.
Yeah,
for me, I thought both Danny Southworth and Rhys Barrett put in good shifts. Actually, obviously it was a tough old time at the scrum. That wasn't just their fault. We were just less powerful than them as a pack overall. But in open play, I thought Danny was particularly good, sort of extra flankerish the way he jumped on a few loose balls and obviously took his try well. And then Rhys Barrett had that really nice carry leading up to Gabe Hamer-Webb's try as well, jumping off the offload from Teddy. So yeah, it was good to see them both do well. But yeah, I'd bring Doma straight back in for this one.
Yeah, I said when I'm calling people to come straight back in, it's because they are objectively our first choice, not because I'm not switching. Hooker, give Evan Lloyd another go, or do you go for Dav Hughes start? For me, I'd say it's much of a muchness at the moment, unless
I just
come into fitness.
Belcher did travel to Lyon, as he was the travelling reserve. I don't know if that means he's like 100% fit, or whether that means it was just like if we're absolutely in dire need, then Belcher will just play through the pain of his thumb falling off or something. But yeah, I think I'd probably just go Hughes on the basis that Jockey seems to be going every other, really, just swapping them back and forth. So.
Works for me.
Yeah.
I said I don't think Evan Lloyd necessarily. I said some of the lineouts went wonky, but so did some of
Yeah.
that. So I'm not too worried either way. And then tight head, it's because we couldn't see Azarati in your
Well, I think
in your research, but
it's possibly him with his back to the camera, but it's not definitely. I think if Az is there, if he is back and available, I think he does go back in as well. Litterick didn't go off injured at all, but he took a couple of bangs as well last week. He had treatment on at least 2 occasions, I think.
Yeah, I think he did get a bit of tough treatment from the Lyon pack.
But yeah, so but if not, then Litterick. But yeah, if the other lads are back and as I was just on holiday, I'm pretty sure he will be available.
Yeah, and then second row, Teddy's playing again.
Yeah. In the Lilo category of sorry, mate, you're just playing all the time.
You're just playing every minute of rugby for Cardiff this season. I think Seb went well that first thing. I actually thought McNally came. I'm not sure if McNally made an impact coming off the bench, or he was just adding something we were missing to start off with.
Is there a difference between those two things?
It's in the 2011 World Cup where France played 2 nines during the first half, and then they brought on I think Transduke.
Yeah, okay,
everything looked really better, and the coach thought, "Well, this is brilliant. He's an impact sub." And it's like, it's not better. You've just put a 10 on, and now you have shape. It's like Cardiff was sort of there, and then Josh McNally comes on, and all of a sudden it gets more physical. It's like, I'm not sure that's an impact, or no, we've just got someone physical on the pitch now.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's like, oh, we're struggling at their mauls. Oh, hang on, we've brought a guy who can stop the mauls. Yeah,
I'm not sure that's an impact. I think that's just someone doing the job.
No, but for me, McNally comes back in. I think against a big old South African pack who are going to turn up and try and maul us to death. I think it's McNally.
Exactly. He's had like a good 48. He had good 48 minutes off that last game. So he should be ready to go. We're getting our kilo of flesh off of him. Back row for me, I've tended to stick with the same flankers: Alex Mann, Dan Thomas. And then bring Thomas Young at the end.
I would disagree on. I think both of them for Man. I think both of them's back.
Oh, sorry. Obviously both of them. Sorry, but I just forgot about both. How I forget about Bob. I don't know what it is with James Botham. He's amazing when he's there, and I forget about him when he has a couple of weeks off. And I'm so sorry, James. I'm really sorry.
The forgotten man in Welsh rugby.
I was like, oh yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
I thought Man, like there was the whole like some of those incidents at the end, but I thought the main thing actually was just before that penalty incident was which you may not have seen watching on double time if you're skipping the breaks, but he was under the post. He was under the post just throwing up, and like there was no moment where the director or the cameraman went, do we want to be showing this as sort of a Saturday tea time-ish? This man just throwing up on the pitch. No, we're going to zoom in, actually, if anything, get real tight to this shot.
It's not the first time that Man's done it. So I know Lee, who does all the off wrap and does a lot of the behind-the-scenes work for all the pods in the family. He was saying that he's seen it before, and it's something to do with like if players take on too much water and then do something exercise, the stomach just rejects it. It's like almost a shock thing.
That's disgusting.
But he just does it a lot. It's like,
yeah, I wondered if it was because some of the way he was sort of running around in that last 10 minutes as well. I think there was also an element of I think he just like burned himself out a bit. Like he's obviously not long back from 6 months off. He'd played a little bit the week before, and in a sort of quite an end-to-end basketball style game, I think his legs might have disappeared.
I think this is the disadvantage of. If you're starting Dan Thomas or Thomas Young and the bench player is the other one, and I don't think they necessarily work as I think your back row gets balanced. So you either have to have 6-2 or you have your 19 has to be able to play 6 as well. Because I think that does thing. So I mean you could have both of them on the bench as well, I guess. But yeah, happy with that. I said Dan Thomas, nothing against Thomas Young. I just think the chaos he can bring in off after in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah,
but then if Thomas Young starts, I quite like the fact we've got 2 sevens where it kind of changes the game, but I'm happy either way.
Whether one of them suits this game slightly more. I think maybe from a defensive sense, I think it's probably Dan Thomas, and then from an attacking sense, it's probably Thomas Young. So, it's this sort of which way, with how Jockey sees if he wants to be a bit quicker and a bit more move the South Africans around, then it's probably Thomas Young. But if he's more concerned about meeting the physical battle and getting stuck in sort of breakdown wise, then it's probably Dan Thomas in terms of sort of counter rucking and ruck cleaning and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think if Ben Donnell's fit, I'd probably go own balance, probably definitely Thomas Young, because Ben Donnell adds a lot of your physicality if it tackles him. You've got Thomas Young as your jackal threat.
Yeah.
Whereas I mean, even I suppose with both of them, Dan Thomas, I think, can work quite well.
Yeah, I was about to say that both of them can do what Thomas Young does in terms of being an athlete and a bit of pace and getting around the field and stuff. So he's just class, both of them. To be fair.
Yes, not much more than that. Right, so the exciting one that we've got to talk about, I don't know if it's just because Cardiff are teasing us, but also featured very heavily in that training view was one Mr. Talupe Faletau.
Yeah,
are we brave enough to suggest that he might actually play?
They've been dangling him as bait for a few weeks now. He just appears every now and again in these videos, but he is like obviously very heavily participating in training in this video, doing sort of team units, team run throughs as well as just sort of unit line out type work. So, I mean, you made a good point about, if you want to make it again, before the pod, about getting him playing before the derbies.
So I said, yeah. So for me, I think, if we can get, because I do think Faletau sometimes he just needs a game. He's not, he doesn't need a huge build up, I think, to get to big games. He's fairly, but he's not quite a Navidi who, after he came back from an injury, it was like he hadn't been away.
Yeah.
So actually having this game to sort of give him a few minutes in his legs and actually starting him, because I do think he does struggle off the bench. I think if he grows into games. So actually, if you give him, and even if you give him 40 minutes, and you have someone like Big Al on the bench who, if we need back row cover, he can. We've got enough cover there with both of them being able to go across the back row. Alan can play 6 himself. He could play 6 or 8. Really, I'm not too worried. So for me, I think the best, if Faletau's fit, the best place for him is the start. And then even if it's like 30 minutes and he needs to be pulled off, then we've got someone like Alan Norris who can go 80. And I'm not worried about, and I wouldn't be worried.
Yeah, can't disagree with any of that, to be fair.
But I feel like what's going to happen is it's just going to be Alan Lawrence again, or Man will start at 6, and both of them will be 8.
I mean, if it is Al again, I've no qualms with that at all. I think I'd be reticent to start both of them at 8 against a big South African side. I think we do really need like a proper punchy ball carrier there with Al or Faletau, who can just sort of get past people by vaguely wafting near them. If it is Faletau, then great. He's looking in pretty good nick in these videos, and they had mentioned before that we went from might be back before the autumn to be back just after the autumn to now it's sort of mid-December. Hopefully they've just been like super cautious with him, and now he is back and ready to give us sort of 50-60 minutes from the start and look really good. If he gets that and then can fly into 80 against the Dragons on Boxing Day, then I don't think anybody turns that down in any club in Europe, really. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably the best place for him. Moving on to the bench, so 16. Do you think maybe we get a Belcher back off the bench if he's vaguely fit, or do you think it's just or is it going to be Evan Lloyd again?
I think it'll just be Lloyd.
We're swapping around it.
Yeah, well, I don't think Belcher's quite back yet, but they initially, when he got injured, mentioned Boxing Day for Belcher, so hopefully, finally, particularly Evan Lloyd, who's gone straight into Wales camp, obviously didn't play much, but has been stuck in that camp and then come back and full time with us. I think he wouldn't mind a week off at some point as well, so be good to get him some rest. But yeah, Lloyd for this one.
He had 4 weeks off with Wales, so. For me, 70, the replacement Lou said I'm going with Southworth because we've got Donchowski. Nothing against Reece Barrett, it's just Southworth I think's just had that bit more game time. And then if we're assuming Azarati's fit, Littrick on the bench,
Yeah,
And
lift up
then
there.
if not, then it's Will Davis King.
Yeah.
That's quite easy. 19. Do we go? Are you thinking we give Seb another go, or do we go for someone like Rory Thornton to sort of lock down set piece towards the end? I'm leaning more towards Seb.
Yeah, I think I thought I had Seb when I run through a 23 in my mind earlier. So yeah, I think I'd stick with Seb on that one.
Yeah, and then bench, I sort of alluded to it. I'd probably go with Big Al, just because you've got that extra ball carrier. If we are starting Falato, then you've got someone who can come on for him, and there's no pressure on Falato to do the 80.
Yeah, the only thing to perhaps consider is whether it's a 6-2 or not for this one with a big South African pack. Could be it could be Lawrence and Young on the bench, go 6-2 where
Yeah,
you've got.
I'd go with that. As I said, I think if you're going to have Dan Thomas and Young in your 23, I would go 6-2 anyway, just because I think if you go down a back row, if you go someone who isn't 7, that your balance gets completely messed up.
It also points to, obviously, if Millard's not there, De Beer questionable, Jennings hasn't trained much, Stevens injured,
do we have
Cabango injured.
Do we have 3 more backs?
Backs is an issue, but then with Beetham back, with Ben Thomas back in, we've got plenty of positional flexibility in that back line as well. So I'd be happy to go 6-2 with Lawrence and Young, I think, for this one.
Yeah, looks to me. And then replacement scrum half is got to be Mulder.
Has to be Mulder, yeah.
Unless someone's joined that we don't know.
Yeah.
They've actually cloned Alec Davis for the second half. So yeah, full chaos and 23 jersey then. I'm probably going Gabe.
Gabe will win it.
It'd be Gabe or winning, yeah. I feel like with Gabe you probably have a little bit more because you can always push Adams to fullback again.
Yeah, or Ben can go to fullback as well, can't he? Yeah. Positionally, it's Gabe. Sort of quality, it's Win It probably in terms of Win It being the international player there, and but yeah, I think actually probably what tips it slightly in favour of Gabe as well is that you can just bring him on for Bowen then if Bowen was having any sort of problem on debut, if he did pick up a knock or he found that he just didn't have 80 stepping up to senior rugby or touch wood, it wouldn't have happened, but he was having a bit of a stinker and really struggling to adapt, then Gabe is your option there, which I think, like we said earlier, giving Win It a total.
For me, I'd go Gabe. That's another argument for keeping that 5-3, isn't it? And you Gabe.
Yeah.
Your centre covers a bit. Yeah, but I think that's just where we are with Grady injured.
Yeah, Beetham could step
be a
up.
bit.
Beetham could go into 13,
definitely,
essentially.
12, 13, I'm not, yeah. Kind of makes me think of that Eddie James, Ben Thomas axis we had in the autumn series for Wales. I'm not so sure.
It was a question actually. I think somebody replied on Twitter about Beetham to 13, wasn't it? Whether you think he could
I think
slot in there.
It's for me. He's probably big enough to run the wide channels and stuff like that. He's certainly got the pace. And actually having yet another kicking option is always good for pin teams back. Again, it'd be how much has he had to defend there?
Yeah, I think he's a smart rugby player. So as soon as he's come onto the scene, you watch him play through the 18s when he was more of a 10, and then when he switched back to sort of full back and stepping up into 12 as well when he's been in there. He's had no problem there. Obviously, it is a different dimension playing 13 and something that, as far as I'm aware, he's never done, whether at youth or coming through the pathway after that into Cardiff and Wales age grade setups. But yeah, I think the risk would be that he sort of ends up playing like Max Llewellyn did a little bit for Wales as more of a 12.5 than an out and out 13, and you end up a little bit narrow there. But if they wanted to, I feel like they could make a project out of it. It's whether A, they actually want to, and B, it's really best for his development at this point to sort of be trying to pick up another position again where he's already 10 for Wales, 12 a bit for us, 15 for us, quite a lot. So.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well give him a few games as scrum half, and then you can say, "Well, we're going to 7-1, and Beetham's the only sub we need, and we'll even have him covering 7 as well." Just. It ends
Yeah.
up becoming more of a community rugby player where you just play wherever there's a slot.
If yeah, with the 6-2, with I think you could have beat him as an emergency 13 anyway if really needed to, but it probably would end up him and Ben just playing 12 together really.
Yeah. So the match day 23 that we have selected, which will 100% be wrong for at least one or two things. Because if it is exactly right, then Jockey, we are open for consultancy work. So going 15-9, we've got Jacob Beetham, Josh Adams, Ray Lilo, Ben Thomas, and Tom Bowen getting a first senior cap. Sheedy and Alex Davis are halfbacks. Then in the pack, we've got Corey Domachewski, Dav Hughes, Kieran Azarati, Josh McNally, Teddy Williams, James Botham, Dan Thomas, with the mighty return of the even mightier Faletau. And then on our bench, we've gone for Evan Lloyd, Danny Southworth, Reese Litterick. Then as part of the extra part of the bomb squad, we've got Seb Davis, Big Al, and Thomas Young. And then Johan Mulder and Gabe Hamer as our backs cover. I think we'd now, obviously, with the caveat of this, Azarati is playing Litterick moves to start and Will Davis King on, but that's neither here nor there. I think that's a decent enough team. Got a prediction for this one?
I hadn't really thought about that, to be honest. Should have probably thought about it beforehand. It's a tricky one to call, actually, because obviously we don't know exactly what sort of level the Cheetahs are going to be. Weather looks pretty good on the Arms Park Saturday night, which I think plays into our hands a lot more than it does to the Cheetahs. Hopefully we can get a bit of running rugby going and move them around a bit versus it being absolutely pissing down and windy and they just sort of pushing us off the pitch up front. But I'm going to say Cardiff by 12.
I cannot remember what I said on the right, but I think it's two. I think we can win by 2 scores, but I think the important thing has got to be we can't chase it.
Yeah,
I think we've got to, build the score, be patient with everything, and the important thing, which is probably the thing that's done us in, particularly in the Dragons game and other game seasons, just can't take the foot off the gas. We've just got to focus on that full 80.
Yeah,
I mean they should anyway, but I know you just can't. But yeah, so the only other thing is, as you've previously mentioned, the Rags are away to Ebu Vale, who probably one of the closest teams to us in the league. Bit of an interpod rivalry here with Gav from Dragon's Lair being a very proud Ebu Vale man. What are your thoughts on this game?
it's going to be a tough one. Obviously, always a tough place to go, Eugene Cross Park, especially in the middle of December. It's sort of like Welsh Rugby's "Can you do it at Stoke on a Tuesday night" type thing. It's going to be made extra challenging by that Wales under-20s game I mentioned on Friday. So we could be without Steph. Obviously, if Tom Bowen's with the first team or with the 20s, then be without him. Cody Stone, I think, is likely to be involved in that 20s as well, potentially. So there's a couple of guys missing. Maybe Evan Reese as well from the back row stocks. And Cam Tyler Grocott, though I'm not sure how fit he is yet at Loosehead. But I think it's possible that Josh Thomas might be fit at fly half because Harry Wild may well be involved in that 20s as well. So if Josh Thomas is fit, that'll be a big boost. But yeah, it's going to be one to lean on the semi-pros and particularly the lads in the pack. They're going to have big games. They've been playing well. Sean Moore, Alan Reese, Mark Thomas, back row guys, Nathan and Craig Hudd, Aled Ward as well. Benji Williams. These guys have been in good form, but they haven't. Obviously, last few weeks has been a bit interrupted with it being called off for the Storm, and then the Llandovery game was called off as well because of poor weather that weekend. And there's been the few weeks off where SRC stopped over the autumn. So those guys are going to have to come in where they haven't had a huge amount of minutes recently and really hit the ground running with a big physical showing away at Ebu, who we've beaten them already earlier in the season, but I think they'll be disappointed with their showing that day as well. They were a little bit off it, so they'll be looking to right some wrongs. And it's first v second. I think there's 2 points in it between us at the moment at the top of the SRC. So big game going into a double header then against Newport over the Christmas period as well, which they're always massive battles against the old rivals to the east. So I think it'll be very, very tight and tetchy no matter what goes on at Ebu, but hopefully they can just squeeze out on top.
Yep, sounds good. And big shout out for John Evans of Scarlets and Dragons fame, who's currently ripping up for Ebbw Vale at scrum half. And if you want to hear more on his opinions on Welsh rugby and stuff, check out last week's episode of the Dragons Lair podcast. I thought he was very good value. And all that's left for me to say is thank you, Dan, for joining me as ever.
Cheers.
And thank you all for listening. Hurrah.
That was the Cardiff Central Podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.